Well, what a week it's been. Basically, there are three groups, and this is what's emerging, the emerging consensus in the United States by government officials and the media largely. There are the legitimate protesters that are mourning the tragic murder of George Floyd, campaigning for reform in law enforcement, all of which is entirely reasonable and justified. The second group in the nightly chaos is those just taking advantage of it to get a free TV or what have you. And third are the truly malevolent actors, the Antifas and these organized leftist or anarchist type groups. And what's emerging today actually is that there may be foreign involvement as well. Attorney General Barr didn't specify, but those details will be coming out, that there have been foreign actors seeking to agitate and play both sides just to fan the flames to weaken the United States so they can pursue their own
Russians.
objectives. Yeah, or Russia, but foreign actors, to be sure. It wasn't specified, but Russia would be on the list, China, Iran, and so forth. I mean, there's be a rogues gallery of potential actors on the internet.
Hey, John, what's your view of what happened with the president this week? I mean, he stirs so much passionate debate, doesn't he, on both sides, really? But at the end of the day, you know, with the Bible thing in front of the church, does that just play right into his support base?
You know, President Trump, you know, he receives a lot of criticism and then unquestioned adulation from his base. And, you know, our job here is to kind of cut through that and make sure what criticism is leveled is fairly charged. President Trump, what he did was ham-fisted so much so that it's unfair to hams everywhere, and going across the park into the church. It was not necessary. What he should have done was an Oval Office address talking about how, you know, what steps that the federal government's going to take to make sure that justice prevails here and to prevent and to seriously deal with the underlying issue of law enforcement and the black community. Wouldn't have been too hard to do that. But anything President Trump does is going to be roundly criticized, fairly or not. And the fact of the matter is, he did not invoke the Insurrection Act, when in fact that was done under Presidents Eisenhower and twice under President Kennedy. So they're treating like what he has done is without precedent, when in fact it was, if he had done it, which he did not, in terms of federalizing troops to deal with these protests. So the American media environment is toxic in the extreme.
So, I mean, I guess the point of it was that he's seen to be the strong man. He said he's going to invoke this act, which he didn't end up doing anyway, but he was seen to do that. And this is all part of his, you know, law and order pitch, which will be part of his election campaign this year. It mirrors Richard Nixon. Do you think it'll work?
Well, keep in mind, Law and Order, in 1968, that's a great example. You demonstrate a real fluency with our history. In 1968, that was President Nixon was running. He was former Vice President Nixon at the time, running against Hubert Humphrey. Hubert Humphrey was the far left, supported. America was in as much consternation, if not more so, in 1968 than it is now, but it's certainly equivalent. Former Vice President Nixon then was the law and order candidate, and Hubert Humphrey was the candidate of the left, and President Nixon won that election. So one wonders how are people actually going to see this? Are they going to see this? We want a president that's going to keep us safe, including how many black people? Because keep in mind, it was a lot of black businesses and black neighborhoods that bore the brunt of all this destruction. So how's this going to play out in that community and with that core Democrat constituency? Because if just a little bit of that breaks off for President Trump, the election's over in a walk for the president, which would baffle and just mystify many observers.
Yeah.